They stopped laughing only when the rubber duck quacked back. 1 second a platoon of Makhaal shock troopers stood in a crescent of armored shoulders, mandibles clacking at the small human with the yellow backpack. The next, the duck on her shoulder opened its beak and chirped in flawless Makhaal. "Please wait your turn. My handler is rebooting." The laughter clipped into baffled silence, then restarted louder. Rhea Park had picked the duck because someone stole her comm headpiece, and the evac gift shop had only children's toys left. She was 17, too short for the borrowed flak vest, and officially a non-combatant, a field tech mentee sent to reboot sensors in the border town of Nettle Ridge. The invasion arrived before her certification. The Makhaal chose Nettle Ridge because it sat on the spine of the Great Relay, a communication line strung across prairie and plateau. Take the ridge, sever the voice. Rhea's job, too late and too small, was to keep one node breathing. So she crawled from shelter to shelter while artillery combed the fields, hugging a child's backpack full of fiber couplers, loose diodes, and one yellow duck. She found the node in the park bandstand, disguised as a brass tuba from the town orchestra. The Makhaal found her there, half inside the bell, solder smoking. Their leader wore a cape that looked suspiciously like a repurposed picnic blanket. He boomed something every translator rendered as, "Infant technician?" Rhea wiped flux from her cheek. Her duck translated, "Yes, glorious sir. Infant technician. Please present a responsible adult." The soldiers wheezed, mandibles clattering. One patted her helmet like she was a pet. Rhea flushed, then breathed. If they were laughing, they weren't shooting. "Okay, Quacker," she whispered. "Keep them entertained." Quacker's firmware was a half-legal bundle from a forum of sleep-starved grad students. It let the toy listen, mimic, and stitch phrases. "Esteemed auditors," Quacker announced, "what you perceive as a tuba is a municipal morale enhancement device. Please line up for hugs." More hysterics. Behind their backs, Rhea eased the tuba's false flare aside and reached the relay's heart. The copper was scorched, the laser links slagged by the first bombardment. The only intact path was a ruptured optical thread down the conduit tunnels, accessible if you could snake a new line and beam a clean signal through dust. Impossible for manual aiming. Plausible for someone with a duck. She clipped Quacker to the bell and cut its voice, rerouting the toy's speaker into an alignment tone. If she could make sound ricochet through the bandstand's brass, she might steer a tight beam down the tunnel and wake a relay 2 kilometers away. The leader noticed the quiet. He stooped until breath fogged her visor. "Infant," her translator chimed. "Why do you carry poultry?" "Emotional support equipment," she said. He barked a laugh. "Human child. Surrender the toy and the foolish instrument. We will mount them in our trophy hall." Something stubborn, an allergy to condescension, rose inside her. The war pressed at the edges of this ridiculous moment, burned wheat, fleeing buses, rising smoke. She thought of her mother in a shelter eating cold beans, and of the relay map with its red dead zones spreading like rot. "No," she said. The words sounded steadier than she felt. The leader cocked his head, amused. "No? No," Rhea repeated, and kicked the bandstand's power strip. The tuba hummed alive. Quacker emitted a pure tone so clean it made her teeth ache. The antique horns resonated, focusing the note into a spear that dove through the floorboards. The soldiers flinched. The leader reached for her, then froze as his earpieces flooded with alarms. Somewhere far down the conduit, a green dot pulsed on Rhea's tablet. The relay answered like a sleepy lighthouse clearing its throat. The Makhaal stopped laughing. "New orders?" Rhea guessed. "That ping is the frontier saying hello." He snarled and swung his rifle toward the duck. Rhea yanked Quacker free and somersaulted behind the tuba as the first shot shattered the railing. "Attention, honored guests," Quacker chattered on its last batteries. "Please refrain from perforating the decor. The infant technician is fragile and will bite." Rhea slid into the shadow under the stage, hugging the backpack, heart thrumming. The relay's heartbeat continued in her palm. If she could keep it online 10 minutes, the cavalry might hear. If she lasted 2, she could pass coordinates and crawl. If she lasted 0, the Makhaal would mount a duck and call it history. She crawled deeper, wires snagging her vest, boots above thudding on planks. 2 minutes, she told herself. Be funny later. Rhea clenched her jaw. She was a non-combatant. But she was here, carrying a line no one else could. And the battlefield would go silent soon, one way or another. The duck was dead, but the line was alive. That was the absurd equation that kept Rhea crawling through the bandstand's underbelly while the Makhaal tore the park apart above her. Every splinter of the wood shook as energy bolts punched through the gazebo's lattice. Smoke and soil rained down in lazy zero-G motes. Gravity had given up for the afternoon. She bit the inside of her cheek and pulled the cable coil tighter against her chest. The tuber relay had locked its handshake, but without a booster, the signal would fade before it reached the orbital node. She needed an amplifier, a power source, and about 6 more lifetimes of training. What she had instead was a burnt battery, a duck carcass, and nerves strung tighter than violin wire. Quacker's plastic shell was cracked, the circuit guts glowing faintly from residual charge. Sorry, buddy, she muttered, prying out the microcore. It was a joke of a processor, built for nursery rhymes, not warfare. But it had one quirk worth saving, a subroutine that mimicked voice frequencies so precisely it could align to resonance nodes. That was how she'd hit the relay in the first place. If she could couple that to the right harmonics, maybe she could turn a children's toy into a laser-tight transmission array. Footsteps overhead, metallic and close. The Makhaal weren't laughing anymore. Their boots clanged like gongs, methodical, sweeping the ruins. A voice barked and clipped alien syllables, then something heavy crashed. A piano, maybe. Nettle Ridge's park was dying one instrument at a time. Rhea found a maintenance hatch and squeezed through. The tunnel below was half flooded, half dark, the smell of copper and ozone so thick she could taste it. She dropped to her knees and sloshed forward, the duck's core clenched in her teeth. Somewhere behind, a plasma torch hissed. They were cutting their way down. Think, she told herself. Amplifier. Her headlamp caught the shape of a substation node, old Terran infrastructure, scavenged and spliced. It was meant for environmental control, not communication, but it had a transformer big enough to power a city block. If she could reroute it. She hacked the panel open with her multi-tool, fingers trembling. The inside was chaos, dusty wiring, faded color codes, a handwritten label reading property of maintenance. Do not die touching this. Noted, she whispered. The trick was converting current without frying herself. She'd watched engineers do it a dozen times. Now she had to fake the muscle memory. The cable ends sparked as she twisted them together, the smell of insulation burning into her gloves. The screen flickered, then came alive with the dull green of diagnostic code. Okay, come on. She slotted Quacker's core into the circuit, attached her wrist pad to the substation interface, and prayed to any god who tolerated humor. Uploading nonsense in 3, 2. The system stuttered. Then the loudspeaker, somewhere deep in the park, came on. Not her voice, but Quacker's. The same calm, absurd tone. Attention! Please evacuate the immediate area. The infant technician is conducting a live demonstration of human stupidity. Her laugh came out like a sob. But it worked, the tone carried. The harmonics wrapped around the power grid and jumped across the line, boosting her relay's strength by an order of magnitude. Somewhere in orbit, the human fleet's listening posts would be hearing a new beacon flaring to life. Signal outbound, she whispered. Coordinates attached. Then came the answering roar. The Makhaal commander's voice bellowed through a translator. Surrender! You are surrounded, small animal! Accurate, she muttered. She could see their shadows now, distorted by the glow of the torch, 3 figures descending the tunnel. Their armor made them look like walking artillery. She ducked behind the substation, heart hammering. The relay timer on her pad blinked, 90 seconds left until confirmation. She just had to hold them off that long. She pulled a power wrench from her pack. Not a weapon, but heavy enough to matter. The irony wasn't lost on her. the human girl defending a galactic communications node with a wrench and a duck's ghost. The first Makhaal dropped into view, tall enough that his head scraped the tunnel ceiling. He aimed, the barrel glowing blue. Rhea swung. The wrench hit his arm with a hollow clang, sparks spraying like fireworks. The shot missed, searing a line across the wall. The second alien fired into the dark, the tunnel filled with plasma light. Rhea flung herself sideways, rolled through the puddle, and threw the wrench at the speaker above the transformer. It shattered, wires sparking, and the tone shifted. The substation began to howl, a rising harmonic feedback that built faster than she could cover her ears. The Makhaal staggered back, disoriented. "Warning!" Quacker's voice crackled over every frequency at once. "Human stupidity has reached critical mass. Please enjoy the fireworks." Rhea gritted her teeth and slammed the emergency breaker. The overloaded grid detonated in a wash of light, blinding and hot. The tunnel shook. For a moment she thought she was dead, then the noise faded into ringing silence. She opened one eye. The transformer was gone, half the tunnel collapsed, and the Makhaal were sprawled in the debris, twitching from the EMP shock. Her wristpad flickered, then blinked green. Relay confirmed. Signal received. Her breath hitched. The fleet had heard her. She laughed again, the sound shaky and small in the smoking dark. "You're still funny, Quacker," she said to the charred toy core, which now lay in her lap, melted but still faintly glowing. Above, the sky thundered, distant sonic booms. Reinforcements. The Makhaal commander roared orders, but it was too late. The air itself was turning white with descending drop pods. For a fleeting, absurd instant, Rhea thought, maybe I should have brought a bigger duck. Then she was running again, one hand on the relay tablet, the other clutching Quacker's remains, as the battlefield above prepared to go silent in an entirely different way. The first human dropships screamed through the clouds like falling stars, their contrails carving luminous scars across the blackened sky. Every living creature on Nettle Ridge looked up, humans, Makhaal, even the frightened prairie birds hiding in their burrows, and knew that the battlefield's quiet would soon give way to something far more dangerous. Rhea was still running when the first one hit. The impact rolled through the tunnels like thunder made of concrete. She stumbled, caught herself on a rusted pipe, and squinted at the tablet strapped to her wrist. The relay link was holding steady, but the power fluctuations were off the charts. Her improvised substation had burned itself into oblivion, which meant the signal could die the moment her fleet arrived. "They're coming in blind," she muttered. "They'll walk right into the Makhaal's perimeter if I don't fix the—" Her words died when she heard the alien commander's voice echo down the tunnel. "Human girl!" It boomed, distorted by the translator's growl. "The storm you have called will bury you, too. You think you have one because your toys fall from the sky?" She pressed herself against the wall, clutching the melted remains of Quacker. "Yeah," she whispered. "Toys are kind of our specialty." Her mind raced. The only way to stabilize the signal long enough for the fleet to land safely was to create a grounding pulse, a massive burst of electromagnetic feedback to neutralize atmospheric interference. The only conductor left big enough to handle that was the Makhaal command walker she'd seen above ground, a 10-story metal monster that served as both mobile fortress and radio tower for the invaders. Her heart sank. Great. So now I have to hijack a war mech. Totally normal day. She crawled out of the tunnel and into daylight, or what passed for daylight beneath a sky the color of bruised iron. The park was gone, replaced by a wasteland of cratered soil and mangled playgrounds. The tuba bandstand was a skeletal ruin. In the distance, the Makhaal walker loomed over the ridge, six-legged and shimmering with defensive shields. "Okay," she said aloud, to no one in particular. "Don't die stupid." She ran. The air was thick with dust and ionized heat. Every few seconds, a plasma bolt scorched past, lighting the ground in white fire. She ducked behind what had once been an ice cream truck, now little more than twisted metal. The walker's legs were anchored near the ridge's edge, its cannons tracking the descending human ships. She could see the command node glowing beneath its armored belly, a cluster of energy lines pulsing like veins. She tightened her grip on Quacker's melted casing. The toy's microcore still pulsed faintly, a rhythmic blink. It wasn't dead yet. You still with me, buddy? A faint crackle answered through the toy's speaker. Affirmative. Emotional support protocol active. Please stop sprinting. You are unfit. Rhea almost laughed despite herself. Good to have you back. She needed an access port. The walker's armor was smooth except for a series of heat vents along its flank, narrow, glowing seams too small for a soldier but just wide enough for a stubborn 17-year-old with bad judgment. She sprinted again, timing her movement between cannon blasts. When the mech shifted its legs to re-aim, she dove through a vent, scraping her knees on the molten edges. Inside, it was like crawling through a metal throat. The air was hot, filled with the hum of power. Every vibration threatened to shake her loose. She used Quacker's faint glow to guide her, following the pulse of the energy conduits toward the control core. Plan, she whispered. I need a plan. Improvisation detected, Quacker said cheerfully. Yeah. That's the plan. She reached the command chamber, an alien cathedral of lights and consoles. The commander stood at its center, connected to the neural uplink by a dozen glowing filaments. He turned as she crawled from the shadows, mandibles clacking in something between amusement and disbelief. You, he hissed. The infant. Still me, Rhea said, wiping soot from her face. Still ruining your day. He lunged. She dodged, barely, the clawed hand raking sparks from the wall. She grabbed a hanging filament, ripped it free, and jammed Quacker's core into the exposed port. The system screamed, a deep, static-laced roar that made the air ripple. Lights flickered, then turned red. What have you done? Rhea didn't answer. Quacker's voice filled the chamber again, louder than before, broadcasting through every speaker in the walker. Attention valued participants! Please enjoy this complimentary demonstration of human improvisation. The mech shuddered. Energy poured from its core, racing through its limbs in arcs of lightning. Rhea ducked under a console as the feedback built toward critical. Quacker! She shouted over the roar. Can you sync with the relay pulse? Affirmative. Suggestion, hold on to something, preferably not regret. The feedback exploded outward. Blue-white light swallowed everything. For a moment, Rhea thought she'd been vaporized. But then she realized she was still moving, tumbling through the air as the walker convulsed and collapsed, its legs folding like paper. The blast ripped across the ridge, a shockwave of energy that grounded every signal in the atmosphere. The interference cleared. The human fleet's transmissions came through crisp and strong. On her wristpad, green icons blossomed, drop teams deploying, medevac ships landing, orbital cannons locking targets. The Makhaal commander crawled from the wreckage, half his armor gone. You think this will save you? You destroyed the field, you burned everything. Rhea staggered to her feet, the wind whipping her hair across her soot-streaked face. Yeah, she said softly. That's kind of what humans do. We burn things. But we rebuild better. He raised his weapon, but a shadow fell over them both. A human dropship hovered overhead, its engines drowning out his snarl. Soldiers rappelled down, shouting for her to stand clear. The commander's eyes widened. Your fleet. Mine, Rhea corrected. The dropship's cannons fired once. The blast erased his words. The air was silent again, except for the hiss of cooling metal. The walker lay in ruins, smoke curling into the bruised sky. Rhea sank to her knees, shaking with adrenaline, still clutching Quacker's melted body. Through the static of her calm, the fleet commander's voice broke through. Signal confirmed. You did it, kid! The relay's live. The ridge is ours. She looked up at the sky, now filled with friendly ships, and let out a long, shaky breath. Hey, Quacker, she whispered. You still online? The toy crackled faintly. Affirmative. Suggest mission success percentage, 100. Suggest celebration snack, ice cream. Rhea laughed until she couldn't breathe. The battlefield was finally silent, except for her laughter and the distant hum of human engines reclaiming the sky. The smell of scorched metal lingered long after the last cannon fell silent. The air above Nettle Ridge shimmered with heat and drifting ash, but the stars had returned, quiet, unblinking witnesses to the end of a massacre. The Makhaal ships were gone, some fled, most burning in orbit. What remained of their ground forces lay scattered across the ridge like broken armor pieces on a forgotten chessboard. The hook was that no one believed the quiet. Every soldier, every medic, every survivor kept glancing at the horizon as if expecting another wave, another joke from the universe at humanity's expense. But nothing came. For the first time in 27 hours, there was no gunfire, no alarms, no screaming calms. Just the soft buzz of wind through wreckage, and one human girl sitting cross-legged atop a fallen war machine, soldering a toy duck back together under the moonlight. Rhea's hands were steady, though the rest of her felt like gravity itself was too heavy. Around her, the repair crews were setting up field lights, drones hovering overhead like tired fireflies. The makeshift triage zone at the park's ruins had been renamed Camp Quacker, a joke that spread faster than orders. Someone had even painted a yellow duck on a drop pod, and the name stuck. Soldiers loved absurdity, it made terror easier to swallow. The melted duck lay in her lap, wires reconnected with scavenged filaments. The tiny speaker hissed, flickered, then blinked weakly. Emotional support device online. It croaked. Hello, Rhea? She exhaled. You sound terrible. Statistically accurate, Quacker said, voice distorted but intact. Would you prefer sarcasm or sincerity? Rhea smiled faintly. Surprise me. Congratulations. You remain alive. Against considerable odds. Please refrain from repeating this performance. She laughed, soft but real. The kind that came from exhaustion and relief twisted together. She looked out at the ridge, once a field of gold wheat, now a graveyard of machines, and tried to process the impossible. She had called down an army with a toy. She had fried an alien superweapon using improvisation and nonsense. She had turned a duck into a legend. A figure approached through the dust, Commander Havelock, his exosuit scorched, one arm in a sling, but his grin unmistakable. There you are. The hero of the ridge. We've been looking all over for you. Rhea frowned. I was right here. Fixing my duck. He chuckled. Fleet Command's asking for you, kid. They want to know how a civilian tech student managed to reroute an entire planetary relay using a children's toy. Tell them it was a group project, she said, nodding at Quacker. The commander smirked, then grew serious. You understand what you've done, don't you? That signal saved 3 colonies. The fleet coordinated around it. The Makhaal thought they had us isolated, but you lit up the whole damn system. I was just trying to keep the line alive, Rhea murmured. That's exactly why it worked. He looked at her for a long moment, then tapped his calm. You'll be getting a call soon. Official commendation. Maybe even a post with Engineering Corps. Rhea tilted her head. I'm still failing orbital calculus. Then it's about time we found you a tutor, Havelock said, turning to leave. Get some rest, Sergeant Duck. She blinked. Sergeant what? Too late, he called over his shoulder. It's already in the reports. Quacker beeped quietly. Title acquired, Sergeant Duck. Congratulations on your promotion, Commander of Chaos. Rhea groaned. Great. I start a war and get branded poultry. Accurate, Quacker replied. For a while, she just sat there, staring up at the stars. Dropships cruised overhead, their lights sweeping across the valley like slow-moving constellations. Somewhere in orbit, the Makhaal survivors were sending their retreat signals, clipped, panicked, and short. None of them mentioned a 17-year-old human. They just said the humans turned the battlefield into silence. Rhea closed her eyes and listened to the wind. It carried fragments of sound, laughter, engines, the clang of makeshift kitchens as soldiers cooked whatever rations they could find. Humans were already rebuilding. Already joking. Already moving on. That was their secret weapon. No matter what you took from them, they filled the silence with noise, humor, and stubborn life. Hey, Quacker, she said softly. You think they'll come back? The toy's tiny light blinked. Probability of renewed hostility, 74%. Probability of human victory, 99. She grinned. That's the kind of math I like. The duck paused, then added, Rhea? Yeah? Next time, we bring backup ducks. She laughed again, louder this time, the sound echoing off the steel wrecks. Soldiers nearby turned and smiled without knowing why. The mood shifted, lighter, alive again. Rhea stood, brushing soot from her knees. Around her, humans were already raising antennae, clearing roads, fixing solar panels. A new relay tower was being assembled where the tuba bandstand once stood, and someone had hung a hand-painted sign across its framework. In memory of the little girl who made the aliens stop laughing. She looked up at it and shook her head. They shouldn't have laughed in the first place. Quacker's voice softened. They didn't understand what they were hearing. No, she agreed. But they do now. The stars flickered brighter above, mirrored by the fires below. Humanity had won, not because they were stronger or smarter, but because they were ridiculous enough to try. Because even at the edge of annihilation, they made jokes, built legends, and named a battlefield after a rubber duck. Rhea looked toward the horizon where the Makhaal had fled. Her voice was quiet, but steady. If they come back, we'll remind them again. She tucked Quacker into her vest pocket, the toy's light pulsing like a heartbeat, and walked toward the construction lights where laughter and hammers blended in the night. And above it all, the new relay came online, broadcasting humanity's newest signal into the stars. Not a distress call, not a warning, but a message simple enough for every species to understand. You can laugh at humans if you want. But the next sound you hear might just be silence.